From my earliest memories, I knew I was a disappointment. Not that my parents ever said it directly, they didn't have to. The way they looked at me when I was born, hoping for their first son, and then again when my sister Kate arrived 3 years later, told me everything I needed to know. I was Jenna, their firstborn daughter, and I would never be enough. Maybe the next one will be a boy, I overheard Mom telling Dad after Kate was born. But there wasn't going to be a next one. Complications during Kate's birth meant Mom couldn't have any more children. Their dreams of having a son were put on hold, transferred to some distant future when their daughters might give them grandsons instead. Growing up in our modest suburban home, I watched as Kate quickly figured out how to wrap our parents around her little finger. She'd bat those big brown eyes of hers, and they'd melt like ice cream on a hot summer day. Meanwhile, I grew more independent, learning to rely on myself rather than chase after attention I was never going to get. Kate knew exactly what buttons to push to get what she wanted. I had everything I needed: clothes, food, shelter, education, but emotional warmth was always in short supply, at least for me. Over time, I learned to accept it, to build my own internal fortress of self-reliance. I'm going to study economics, I announced at dinner during my senior year of high school. Mom and Dad exchanged looks across the table. Are you sure, honey? Mom asked, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. That's such a technical field. Dad nodded in agreement. What about something more suitable for a young lady? Teaching, maybe? Or nursing? I stood my ground. I've already been accepted to State University. My grades are good enough for a partial scholarship. Well, Mom sighed, I suppose it's your choice. The disappointment in her voice was familiar by now, almost comforting in its predictability. Kate, who was still in high school, smirked from across the table. I'm thinking of studying psychology, she announced, and our parents immediately brightened. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Mom exclaimed. You've always been so good with people. I pushed my peas around my plate, letting their voices wash over me like background noise. I'd learned long ago that fighting for their approval was a losing battle. Instead, I focused on my future, on the independence that college would bring. I met James during my sophomore year at State University. He was a senior in the economics department, and we literally bumped into each other in the library's financial section. I dropped my statistics textbook, he picked it up, and that's how our story began. You're in Professor Martinez's macro class, right? He asked, handing me back my book. I've seen you asking all the smart questions. I blushed, not used to anyone noticing me in a positive way. Yeah, that's me. The annoying one who keeps the class running late. Not annoying at all, he smiled. Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime? I could tell you about the upper-level courses you'll be taking next year. That coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into movie nights, which turned into us being inseparable. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated. James didn't compare me to anyone else, he just liked me for who I was. After he graduated, James took a job at Anderson Consulting while I finished my degree. He waited for me, and the moment I graduated, we decided to move in together. We found a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Mom, Dad, this is James, I said during his first visit to my parents' house. The change in their attitude was immediate and shocking. Oh, James, Mom practically squealed. We're so happy to finally meet you. Will you be joining us for Thanksgiving? Christmas, both? Dad clapped him on the shoulder. Son, we've heard so much about you. Tell me about your job. Jenna says you're in finance? The word son caught my attention. Of course, they were finally getting the son they'd always wanted, even if it was through marriage. I watched as they fawned over James, asking him about his plans for the future and when he thought he might want to settle down. Kate, who was living at home after graduating and still hadn't found a serious boyfriend, sat in the corner during these family gatherings, shooting daggers at us with her eyes. For once, I was the sister who had something she wanted, and she couldn't stand it. After a year of living together, during a quiet dinner at home, James got down on one knee and proposed. I said yes immediately, and we decided on a small, intimate wedding, despite my parents' protests about wanting something more elaborate. "It's your big day," Mom argued. "Don't you want something more special?" "This is special," I insisted. "It's exactly what we want." The ceremony was perfect, just close friends and family in a small garden venue. James and I exchanged vows, had a lovely dinner reception, and went back to our apartment as husband and wife. It felt right, starting our married life in the same place where we'd begun building our life together. The questions started almost immediately after the honeymoon. "So, when can we expect some good news?" Mom would ask, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed desperation for a grandson. "We're saving for a house first," I'd explain, again and again. "We want to be financially stable before starting a family." Dad would shake his head disapprovingly. "Your mother and I didn't have much when we started out, and we managed just fine." Every family dinner became an update on their friends' growing families. "Did you hear? The Hendersons just became grandparents again, another boy," or "the Smith's daughter just announced she's pregnant, and she's younger than you, Jenna." Finally, after 2 years of saving, James and I bought our first house. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was ours, well, ours and the bank's. The moment we signed those mortgage papers, I knew the baby questions would intensify. And they did. What I hadn't expected was Kate's announcement just 3 months later. "I'm pregnant," she declared during Sunday dinner, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "It's Mark's." Mark was her boyfriend of 6 months, a guy none of us particularly liked. The next few months were a whirlwind. Mark disappeared as soon as Kate started showing, leaving her alone and moving back in with our parents. But instead of this being a scandal or shame, my parents transformed their house into a shrine to their upcoming grandchild. When little Emily was born, you'd have thought she was royalty. My parents converted Kate's old room into a nursery, bought every baby item imaginable, and basically turned their lives upside down to help raise their granddaughter. "Isn't she perfect?" Mom would coo, rocking Emily during our visits. "Don't you just want one of your own, Jenna?" What hurt more than my parents' constant pressure was watching James with Emily. He'd get down on the floor to play with her, make silly faces, and spend hours entertaining her with stuffed animals and children's books. "James is such a natural with children," Mom would say pointedly. "He's going to make such a wonderful father." I started monitoring my cycle, taking vitamins, and doing everything the pregnancy websites recommended. Month after month, we tried. And month after month, nothing happened. Meanwhile, James spent more and more time at my parents' house, playing with Emily. "She's such a sweet kid," he'd say on our drives home. "Did you see how she's starting to walk now? And she almost said uncle today." "You're so good with her," my mother would praise him. "Just imagine how wonderful you'll be with your own children." I'd smile and nod, but inside, a knot of anxiety was growing. Why wasn't I pregnant yet? What if something was wrong? But I pushed these thoughts aside, telling myself it would happen when it was meant to happen. After a year of trying with no success, I was still trying to stay positive. These things take time, I'd tell myself. But when Mom found out we'd been actively trying for a year, she went into full panic mode. "A whole year? Jenna, something's wrong. You need to see a doctor immediately." She started forwarding me contact information for fertility specialists before I'd even left their house that day. Finally, to get everyone off my back, I made an appointment. James came with me, holding my hand in the sterile exam room as the doctor ran through her questions. Blood tests, ultrasounds, and more tests followed. Then came the day of the results. "I'm sorry," the doctor said gently, "but the tests indicate that you're infertile." The words hit me like a physical blow. James squeezed my hand, but I barely felt it. The doctor kept talking about options and treatments, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. That evening, James and I sat in our kitchen, barely touching our takeout dinner. "We can look into adoption or IVF," he said finally. "There are options." I nodded numbly, but the devastation felt complete. How could I face my family with this news? The answer came at the next family dinner. I decided to just get it over with, like ripping off a band-aid. "Mom, Dad," I said during a lull in the conversation, "I need to tell you something. I saw a specialist and..." I took a deep breath. "I can't have children. I'm infertile." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Mom's face contorted with disgust. "Infertile?" She spat the word like it was poison. "What kind of woman can't even do the one thing she's meant to do?" Dad wouldn't even look at me. "An empty vessel," he muttered. "Just an empty flower." Kate sat there smirking, bouncing Emily on her knee. "Well, I guess we know who the real woman in the family is." I looked at James, desperate for support, but he just sat there, staring at his plate. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. I pushed back from the table and ran out of the house, ignoring their calls behind me. After that night, I couldn't bring myself to go back to their house. But James kept going, spending time with Emily, chatting with Kate, listening to my parents. He'd come home full of stories. "Emily learned a new song today," he'd say. "You should have seen her dancing around the living room." Or, "Kate made this amazing lasagna. She's really getting good at cooking." Each word felt like a knife in my heart. I'd lie awake at night, listening to James's steady breathing beside me, wondering if he resented me for not being able to give him children. The guilt ate at me constantly, made worse every time he came home from another visit to my parents' house, with that wistful look in his eyes after playing with Emily. It was a regular Tuesday when my world fell apart. I came home early from work, my arms full of Chinese takeout, James's favorite. But the house was empty and dark. His car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't unusual, but something felt off. I called his cell. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. Then my phone buzzed, a notification from Instagram. Kate Thompson posted a new photo. I usually ignored her posts, but something made me click this time. My stomach dropped as the image loaded, James sitting on my parents' couch, Emily in his lap, and Kate pressed against his side, all three of them grinning at the camera. The caption read, "Family time with my favorite people." My hands were shaking as I grabbed my car keys. The rational part of my brain tried to argue that there could be an innocent explanation, but my gut knew better. The whole drive to my parents' house, my mind raced through every interaction between James and Kate over the past year, seeing them in a horrible new light. Their driveway was full, Mom's car, Dad's truck, James's sedan. The front door was unlocked, as always. I slipped inside quietly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. Voices drifted from the living room. "James, you know we think of you as a son already," my mother was saying. "And you deserve to be happy. You've been so wonderful with Emily," my father added. "And Kate, well, she's young, fertile. You could have more children together. Think about it," my mother continued. "Why stay trapped in a marriage with..." She lowered her voice, but I could still hear the disgust. "A barren woman?" I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. I burst into the room, making them all jump. The scene was like something from a nightmare, my parents and sister on one couch, James in Dad's armchair, Emily playing with blocks on the floor between them. One big happy family, plotting to exclude me. "What the hell is going on here?" My voice came out stronger than I felt. James at least had the decency to look ashamed, but my parents were defiant. "Jenna," Mom stood up, chin raised. "We're just having an honest discussion about what's best for everyone." "Best for everyone?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You're trying to convince my husband to leave me for my sister." "Well, someone has to think about James's future," Dad shot back. "You can't give him what he wants, what he deserves. Kate can." I turned to James, waiting for him to defend our marriage, to tell them they were crazy. Instead, he stared at the floor. "James?" My voice cracked on his name. "I'm sorry, Jenna," he said quietly. "But they're right. I want children, a family. And I've developed feelings for Kate. Kate smirked, reaching out to put her hand on James's arm. Get out, you don't belong here anymore. This is my family now. I looked at each of their faces, my father's stern disapproval, my mother's cold satisfaction, Kate's triumphant smile, James's guilty avoidance. For years of marriage, a lifetime of family ties, all meaningless. Without another word, I turned and walked out. I drove home in a daze, packed a suitcase on autopilot, and left a note for James, file for divorce. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. The divorce was quick and clinical. We split everything down the middle. I found a small apartment across town and threw myself into my work, trying to forget. But social media had other plans. One morning, my coworker gasped at her phone during coffee break. "Oh my God, Jenna, I'm so sorry, I forgot to unfollow your sister." She tried to hide her screen, but I'd already seen it, Kate in a massive white dress, James in a tux, my parents beaming beside them. "It's fine," I said, even though it wasn't. "I hope they're very happy together." A year later, another announcement popped up, "Welcome baby Rose." My replacement had produced the daughter they'd always wanted. James now had his perfect little family, Emily, who he'd adopted, and his new baby with Kate. I deleted all my social media accounts that day. Life has a funny way of surprising you, though. I was shopping for groceries one Saturday when my cart collided with someone else's. "I am so sorry," a deep voice said. I looked up into the kindest brown eyes I'd ever seen. "I'm Michael," he said, helping me pick up my scattered items. "Can I buy you coffee to apologize for being a klutz?" One coffee turned into dinner, dinner into dating, and suddenly I was falling in love again. But this time I was honest from the start. "I need to tell you something," I said one night, 6 months into our relationship. "I can't have children. I'm infertile." Michael took my hands in his. "Jenna, I love you. If we want kids someday, we'll adopt. Or we won't. I just want you." We got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse, just us and a few close friends. No family drama, no expensive dress, no expectations, just love. A year into our marriage, I started feeling strange. Nauseous in the mornings, dizzy at odd times. Michael insisted I see a doctor. "Mrs. Chen," the doctor said, looking at my test results. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." I stared at her. "That's impossible. I'm infertile, I have the tests to prove it." She smiled gently. "The human body is mysterious. Sometimes, despite all odds, pregnancy occurs even in cases of diagnosed infertility. It's rare, but it happens." Michael and I cried together that night, tears of joy, of disbelief, of hope. I didn't tell my family. They'd lost the right to share in my happiness. 9 months later, I held my son in my arms. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of perfect, beautiful boy. Michael and I named him Alexander, defender of mankind. Looking at his tiny face, I felt nothing but pure love. No bitterness, no regret, no anger. Life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Alexander was 2, Michael was the perfect father, and I had everything I'd ever wanted. We rarely ate out, preferring quiet family dinners at home, but that night Michael had gotten a promotion, so we decided to celebrate at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant downtown. That's when I saw them. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But no, there was Kate, my sister, locked in an intimate embrace with a man who definitely wasn't James. They were tucked away in a corner booth, but not well enough hidden. She was running her fingers through his hair, kissing him deeply, completely oblivious to the world around them. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone and discreetly took several photos. The lighting was dim, but the pictures were clear enough, there was no mistaking what was happening. "Jenna?" Michael touched my arm. "Are you okay? You've gone pale." I showed him the photos. "That's Kate. With someone who isn't her husband." Michael's jaw tightened. He knew our whole history, knew what Kate and James had done to me. "Are you going to send those to him?" My finger hovered over the send button. It would be so easy. One click and I could blow up their perfect little family, just like they'd blown up mine. But no, I said finally, saving the photos to a secure folder instead. I'm better than them. A year passed. Alexander was growing into a brilliant, beautiful little boy with Michael's kind eyes and my stubborn chin. We were visiting a friend who lived in my old neighborhood, something I rarely did, and decided to take advantage of the nice weather by walking to a nearby park. That's when it happened. Just our luck, as we rounded the corner by the local supermarket, there they were, Mom, Dad, Kate, and James, loading groceries into their car. They saw us at the same moment we saw them. Their initial reaction was to turn away, noses in the air, pretending we were strangers. But then their eyes fell on Alexander, who was holding my hand and chattering away about the toy truck he'd brought to play with at the park. Mom stopped dead in her tracks. Who is this? I could have ignored them. Should have, probably. But something made me stop. This is my son, Alexander. My voice was steady, calm. Kate let out a harsh laugh. Oh please. We all know you can't have children. Which agency did you adopt him from? I looked her straight in the eye, enjoying the moment. I gave birth to him 3 years ago. No adoption agency involved. That's impossible, Mom sputtered. The doctors said. The doctors were wrong, I cut her off. It happens sometimes. Rare, but it happens. And here's the proof. I gestured to Alexander, who was watching the strangers curiously. Dad's eyes went wide. A grandson? We have a grandson? They moved toward us then, Mom's arms outstretched like she had every right in the world to embrace my child. I stepped in front of Alexander, protectively. No, I said firmly. You don't get to do this. You don't get to throw me away like garbage and then claim my son as your grandson. You lost that privilege when you betrayed me. Kate's face had turned an ugly shade of red as she watched our parents' attention focus on my son. She'd always been the favorite after I was cast aside, and she couldn't stand seeing that shift. Oh, get over yourself, Jenna, she spat. So you managed to pop out one kid. Big deal. I still won in the end. I got your husband, I gave him a real family. 2 beautiful daughters. Face it, I'm still better than you'll ever be. My hand was already on my phone before she finished her rant. Speaking of family, Kate, why don't you tell everyone about your extracurricular activities? What are you talking about? James asked, his eyes narrowing. I pulled up the photos from the restaurant and held out my phone. Here's your loving wife having dinner with someone else. Though I have to say, Kate, most people don't eat their dinner companion's face. The color drained from Kate's face as James snatched the phone from my hand. Mom and Dad crowded around to look, their mouths falling open in shock. Who is he? James demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Kate stammered, he's just a friend from work. Friends don't kiss like that, I observed coolly. And they certainly don't meet in dark corners of expensive restaurants while their spouses are at home with the kids. Kate, how could you? Mom gasped. After everything. Everything what? I couldn't help but laugh. After you helped her steal my husband? After you threw me away because you thought I couldn't have children? Karma's quite something, isn't it? James and Kate were now screaming at each other right there in the parking lot. Come on, sweetie, I said to Alexander, taking his hand. Time to go home. We left them to their chaos, my son chattering happily about the park we were heading to, completely oblivious to the nuclear explosion we'd just walked away from. A month later, the community grapevine brought me the rest of the story. James, suspicious after discovering Kate's affair, had gotten himself tested. Turned out he was the one who was infertile, had been all along. Which meant baby Rose, the daughter Kate claimed was his, couldn't possibly be. He left her immediately, refusing to pay support for either Rose or Emily. Kate moved back in with our parents, her perfect life in shambles. They all tried reaching out to me after that, calls, emails, even showing up at our house unannounced. Please, Jenna, Mom begged through the door. We made a terrible mistake. Let us be part of Alexander's life. He's our only grandson. You should have thought about that before you called me an empty vessel, I replied calmly. Actions have consequences. Michael supported my decision completely. Family isn't about DNA, he said one night as we watched Alexander playing with his blocks. It's about love, respect, and loyalty. They showed you none of those things. He was right, of course. Looking at my little family now, my wonderful husband who loved me regardless of whether I could have children, my miracle son who proved all the doctors wrong, our home filled with laughter and joy, I knew I had everything I needed. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes you have to build your own, with people who choose you back. I chose Michael, and he chose me. We chose Alexander, and he chose us right back with his first smile, his first word, his first steps. That's what real family means. And I wouldn't have it any other way.